Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This video uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Ever wondered why Little Women is still such a hit after 150 years? We're taking a deep dive into the book itself, plus some fascinating background on Louisa May Alcott to see what makes it so enduring.
It's interesting how a seemingly simple story about four sisters has captivated readers for generations.
Right.
What is it about the March family that keeps us coming back?
Well, the story behind Little Women is surprisingly complex. Alcott actually resisted writing it at first, seeing it as just a girl's book.
It wasn't the kind of intellectually stimulating work she aspired to create. Ironically, one of her earlier novels, Moods, flopped because it was considered too idea-heavy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So she pivoted.
Yeah.
And focused on a simple domestic story, even deliberately avoiding controversial topics like the Civil War, even though she had served as a nurse. Talk about a strategic move to appeal to a wider audience.
It definitely worked. And speaking of appealing to audiences, let's talk about Jo March, her tomboyish nature, ambition, and yearning for something more than domesticity resonated with readers, especially young women, right from the start.
She's such a firecracker. That line where she says, "I don't care much for the company of other girls. I appreciate good, strong words that mean something," just perfectly captures her independent spirit.
It's a sentiment that still resonates with readers today, especially those who feel constrained by societal expectations. It makes you wonder, though, does Jo ultimately sell out by the end of the book? Does she compromise her ambition for a conventional happy ending?
That's a great question. It really makes you think about the choices women face then, and even now, when it comes to balancing personal fulfillment with societal expectations.
And Little Women explores so much more than just that one question. It delves into family bonds, personal growth, the realities of poverty, and the challenges of being a woman in the 19th century. Many of those challenges, believe it or not, still resonate deeply with women today.
Absolutely. Like that Christmas scene where the girls give up their breakfast for a poor family.
Yeah.
It's heartwarming, sure, but it also highlights their compassion and the importance of family over material possessions.
It's a powerful contrast to Meg's storyline, where she grapples with the temptation of material wealth and social status. Her struggles with envy and her desire for a more luxurious life are relatable even now, as we're constantly bombarded with messages about what it means to have it all.
It's that exploration of universal themes that makes Little Women so timeless, wouldn't you say?
I completely agree. It's a story that continues to inspire and challenge readers to be their best selves, even amidst societal pressures and personal struggles. And it reminds us that happiness can often be found in the simplest of things: love, family, and personal growth. Yeah. It's fascinating to consider the context in which Alcott wrote Little Women. Her family was deeply involved in social reform movements like abolitionism, and those values are subtly woven into the fabric of the story.
That's right. The Alcott family was all about equality and justice. And while those issues aren't explicitly addressed in Little Women, they're definitely present in the characters' actions and the overall message of the book.
And it's important to remember that Alcott herself was a very independent woman. She worked to support her family and challenged traditional gender roles in many ways. Much like her character, Jo, you can definitely see parallels between Alcott's life and Jo's experiences.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if Alcott was trying to inspire young women of her time to reach for something more than what society expected of them. Speaking of reaching for more, there's this whole theme of personal growth and moral development in Little Women. The girls are constantly striving to be better versions of themselves.
Yes. Each of the March sisters grapples with her own flaws and imperfections. They make mistakes, they face consequences, but ultimately, they learn and evolve throughout the story.
Like when Amy burns Jo's manuscript. Yeah. It's such a heartbreaking moment because Jo has poured her heart and soul into those stories.
It's a devastating loss for Jo, and it creates a major rift between the sisters. But it's through that conflict and the process of forgiveness that both girls learn valuable lessons about responsibility, empathy, and the enduring strength of family bonds.
And then there's that Christmas scene where they give up their breakfast for the Hummel family. It's a beautiful illustration of their compassion and willingness to put the needs of others before their own.
Absolutely. That act of selflessness really demonstrates their commitment to living out their values, even when it means sacrificing something they cherish. And speaking of sacrifice, the March family's experience with poverty adds another layer of complexity to the story.
It's not always picture perfect in the March household.
Right.
They face financial struggles, which forces them to be resourceful and appreciate the simple things in life. It reminds us that joy and fulfillment are necessarily tied to material wealth.
And it also highlights the challenges faced by many families, both in the 19th century and today. Poverty, unfortunately, is a timeless struggle.
It's so true. With all these complex themes and challenges, how do you interpret the ending of Little Women?
Well, the ending is both satisfying and thought-provoking. Each of the sisters finds a path that brings her happiness. But it's not always the path they initially envisioned.
Right. It's true. Like, Jo becomes a teacher and runs a school for boys instead of becoming a famous author, which was her original dream.
And Meg embraces domestic life and motherhood. Even though she initially longed for a more glamorous and affluent existence, it suggests that true happiness isn't always about achieving worldly success or following a prescribed path.
It's about finding fulfillment in the everyday moments, in the love of family, and in the pursuit of personal growth.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons why Little Women continues to resonate with readers of all ages. It reminds us of the importance of human connection, resilience, and finding joy in the simple things, even amidst life's inevitable challenges.
It's funny, I've read Little Women so many times, but it never really struck me as a radical book.
Well, that's what's so fascinating about it.
What do you mean?
When it was first published, Little Women was actually considered quite progressive for its time.
Really? How so?
Well, think about Jo March. With her ambition, her rejection of traditional femininity, her desire for a career, that was pretty revolutionary for the 19th century.
Yeah. She was like, forget the needlework, I'm going to write.
Exactly. And Alcott herself was a trailblazer. She challenged gender norms through her writing and her life choices.
But then why do some people see Little Women as a little too traditional now?
That's a great question. Societal expectations have changed drastically since the 1860s. What was considered progressive then might seem somewhat conventional by today's standards.
That makes sense. We've come a long way in terms of gender equality, but we still have a long way to go.
It's a reminder that progress is an ongoing process, and that even classic literature can reflect the evolving values of society.
So maybe that's why Little Women continues to spark debate. It's a product of its time. But it also speaks to universal themes that transcend any particular era.
Precisely. And that's what makes it such a rich and enduring piece of literature. It invites us to engage in these important conversations about gender roles, societal expectations, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well, I think it's amazing that after all these years, Little Women still has this power to make us think and challenge our own assumptions.
I couldn't agree more. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Little Women, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Okay, I'm all ears.
If Little Women was considered radical for its time, what books being published today might be considered classics in the future? What makes them stand out? And what timeless truth do they reveal about the human experience?
That's a great question to think about. And on that note, if you haven't already experienced the magic of Little Women, I highly recommend giving it a read. You can find a link to purchase a copy in the description below.
And be sure to subscribe to Mindful Moments for more captivating book deep dives. We've got tons of great content coming your way.
Thanks for joining us. See you next time.